Hello, my friends. Christelle here with another episode of the Love and Meaning podcast. And in the love and meaning world of late, we have been talking about relationships. We had, we were all about relationships on our last Friday night live dive, which is my weekly live session hosted on my YouTube page, which has a new handle, by the way, at Coaching with Cookie, or you can search it by my full name, Christelle Robinson-Tiedemann. We were all about relationships. And last week's episode was an interview with the Attract Love coach, Abby. So we've been on a little bit of a relationship trajectory, or little sidebar, trip, station, pit stop, call it what you will, in the love and meaning world. And I was listening back to some of my archive recordings. So how I tend to record the episode is very organically. If I have a stroke of brilliance or just I've been contemplating on something and it just kind of snaps into place all at once and I get really excited. It all just kind of it becomes very inspired within me. I'll just record in that moment. And so I've built a little bit of a library and an archive. And I was going through it to choose the episode for this week, and I stumbled upon this gem. I think it's brilliant, if I may say so myself. And I just wanted to set a context for this recording before we get into it. My intention was not to have a super niched episode, but I realized only in post of the recording I was really in the vibe of it. So I fully I was thinking of it from the place that I was in energetically, but I just want to take full responsibility and just be sure to make it clear that I want you to listen to this through a context and that it needs to be interpreted through this context to be interpreted in the way that I intend. All right. And so the first thing that I want to mention is ultimately I'm speaking to healthy relationships. I'm speaking to a healthy relationship dynamic. I am not speaking to abusive dynamics, toxic dynamics. I'm not speaking to relationships and where what I believe to be the foreground basis, okay, for us to even be stepping into kind of this inner work stuff is safety. So that context has to be set. That is the place that this is who I'm speaking to. This is the place that I'm speaking from. So in listening to this, you were listening through the lens of you have genuinely chose this person for reasons that align with your values. Okay? That align. This is your choice. This person is you chose them for reasons you stand by, reasons you respect, reasons that are aligned with your values and your standards. Okay, this is your person. You are simply human, and we all have struggles, challenges, conflicts. Relationships are not fairy tale situations. And I think at times people can interpret it that way, whether they're in a relationship or not, but can run into a little bit of a dangerous place almost of thinking that what if let's say you're not in a relationship that it's like this total fantastical thing, and then if you are in a relationship that problems don't arise. Either of those stances are not in alignment with real life and real humaning. So if you listen to this from this context, it will hit you in the right way. You will understand what it is I'm saying. And I truly believe there's something very expansive in a sense. It's very simple. But if you really take this in, it can be such an opening. yeah, this was a very important um, stage of awareness for me, and it has served me well. So there are a couple of things within this context, this healthy relationship at the base of it. Okay, this choosing this or this genuinely being your person, and for those listening that are not in a relationship, this is helpful too, because it's really helpful to walk into relationships and walk into even the opening to allowing for the universe to align you, understanding these very real dynamics and what is actually involved in what I believe is leads to longevity and success in relationships. Okay. So, from that context, it is important that you are one, able to feel your feelings. So, this will not make sense probably. And most definitely, most likely, most likely, I'll say, let's not be too definite, most likely not be possible if you are unable to feel and identify your feelings. It is very important for us to know, I'm sad, I'm happy, I'm angry. So when I'm speaking, I'm very aware and letting you know that I know how to identify my feelings, and I am in full allowance of myself to have feelings. So that is actually really an important, and it sounds maybe silly or very simple, but it is a very important baseline context to be set in terms of really stepping into contributing to a very healthy dynamic in your relationship and growth in your relationship. You are a human, you have a full range of emotions, and you know when you're feeling them, you know what they are, and you allow yourself to experience them fully. And at the same time, hold yourself responsible for being respectful and fair to your partner throughout your emotional experience. Okay. So, on number two, I guess I could make this three, but I think it's more, it really covers it with two. And the other thing is that you can differentiate the difference between intuition and wounding. All right. Intuition is something that develops over time, for sure. Like over our lifetime, I believe that we are constantly owning our intuition. But I'm not saying you have to be, a total guru. By no means am I that. But what I'm saying is, this doesn't mean that your wounds aren't there, but you are aware of them and the influence they have on your emotional experience and your interpersonal dynamic. If you are not, it becomes very difficult to know when you are operating from a triggered space. Or not the, because we all get triggered. It's not about it not happening. It's about the awareness. It's about you have an experience and then you can, pretty quickly be like, I know what happened there. Okay. Um, it is important to know the difference because then it is very difficult to know when something is coming from like your wise self, your aligned inner self, when you're being guided from that, and when you're being guided from from your wounding. When we are not aware, we actually fall into a lot of patterns and don't realize that our wounding, our traumas, our conditioning is what is literally dictating our behavior and our movement. Okay, so there has to be some understanding of the difference between your most inner wise self and your wounding. And not that you're not still in the process. Always, I think we're constantly in the process of becoming more and more self aware, but some self awareness needs to be there for this to make sense. All right. So these are the important things, kind of really necessary, and understanding that this is a healthy dynamic that I'm speaking to. A healthy dynamic that is human, that has challenges, conflicts, mistakes, the whole shebang. But you want to be with this person. This person wants to be with you. And I'm making it clear that both individuals are interested and committed to having a really wonderful dynamic in the relationship and having the best possible relationship that they can from this stage. So, really bring an open heart, really bring your full sense of personal power and responsibility to your listening, and let's see what happens. I'm feeling really confident that if you're open to it, this can be pretty transformative. This can be pretty transformative. And I would love to hear your thoughts. So, again, as I mentioned in the very beginning, come and hang out with me on Friday night live dive every Friday, 6 p.m. EST on my Coaching with Cree YouTube page. I would love to hear your thoughts. I would love to hear your questions. I would love to hear your insights. I would love to hear your breakthroughs. I would love to hear from you. Let's deepen the conversation, because really that's how this stuff becomes, we can bring it to life. This is how it moves into embodiment, is when we bring our real lives to it. So with that, let's jump into the episode, fully open to receive what I think is a really deep and transformative message. Welcome to Love and Meaning. I'm your host, Christelle Robinson-Tiedemann. On today's episode, let's talk a little bit about relationships. And I might have somewhat of an unpopular opinion to share. Maybe, maybe not. You guys, you let me know what you think. But I want to talk about imperfection. When I think of my younger self, I found myself kind of going from relationship to relationship, seeking like the right person, the right person who's going to come along and be this, great whatever for me. And I wasn't really doing a lot of changing myself at that time. I was just kind of expecting the other person to be a certain way. So I was very good at identifying my partner's flaws. I was very good at identifying and very good at letting them know all about it. But I definitely wasn't good at recognizing my own or taking any onus in terms of the dynamic. It was very much centered around how they were supposed to be to me. And I felt very righteous in this. And, I went about continuing to go from relationship to relationship with this same stance until I took a long pause on dating because I got exhausted with that pattern. And in that time in between there is when I started actually doing inner work and personal development work and mindset work and learning all kinds of things. I started to learn about feminine and masculine energies. Like I started to do a lot of actual learning. And this is when I, for the first time, stumbled upon the idea that maybe it's a two-way street in relationships. It's not just what the other person is bringing to the table, but what am I bringing to the table? And not only what am I bringing to the table, what am I doing in the context of a dynamic that might be influencing another person in a certain way, in ways that they might not even act with other people. Okay? So I really started to think about this, and all of a sudden, I started to not see other people or my potential partners as so terrible anymore. Not so flawed, not so problematic. And it is still a habit, like to learn to not nitpick on people. It took some time. And in many ways, I'm still working on that. I'm sure my husband can attest to that, to both the working on it, and he's honest. I'm sure he'll tell you that I'm definitely better, but also that like I'm not better enough. um, but I do truly not expect perfection, and I don't expect perfection from myself. I value apologizing. I value problem solving, genuine problem solving, not fighting. And above all, what I think my husband and I do really well is that we value repair over perfection. And this is this has been kind of a life-changing stance for me in terms of coming at relationships in this way. Because from this stance, like almost any relationship has potential. And like I said, I was going to say something that's a little bit unpopular or controversial. I am by no means telling you to find any Joe Schmo out on the street and just say, hey, let's make it work. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is there is a lot more to work with in relationships than we often admit, give credit to, give time to, give attention to, give a chance to. Many, many aspects of relationships, I might even want to argue any, can be worked on when both parties are actually genuinely interested in it. So let's not use extreme examples, but let's just say like in our actual relationships, the person that you've chosen, okay, like you're choosing to be with this person. The areas in your relationship that you have trouble with that are a bit rocky or that you feel like are not ideal, they can be given patience and kindness. Not just the person, I mean like the area, the thing that you're working on. It can be given patience and care and time, almost like a child. Like it can grow into something. It does it need to be exactly that right now, like exactly what you want right now in the moment? Is it something that can be worked on over time? What I'm noticing in my own relationship is that the working on certain things over time, like communication is one of ours. We communicate so very differently. But working on it over time, and I'm not saying that it's not even a challenge, it's challenging, has the actual process of working on it, our attachment styles was another one that we worked on. Oh, we came a long way. Um, we read the book together. What's it called? Wired for Love. I can't remember the name of the author right now. Um, but I'm not even necessarily recommending it. It was an interesting book. There's other books that I would probably recommend further. But what was interesting in it was that it made us go through this kind of exercise and determine whether we like determine what the other person's attachment style is. And we both um categorized each other as secure, but we both also had like tendencies. And my husband has more wave tendencies, which is more
anxious attachment tendencies, and I have more island tendencies, which is more avoidant tendencies. And we have come a really, really long way with that, where we both moved more and more and more to the center, more and more secure through each other, through our relationship. And what I realized in the process of working on things is I actually fell in love with him more. There's something about somebody who works on something with you. There's something about a person who values you enough that you deserve time and effort and trust and patience and kindness and non-judgment and forgiveness. And even if you did judge them, then an apology. And there's something about somebody willing to go through that with you that to me is far more priceless than the person just being absolutely fantastic. And I genuinely don't mean this in a cop-out way. And this is something that I definitely missed out on in past relationships when I didn't even have the maturity to approach aspects of the relationship in this way. So two things are necessary though. There has to be one, you recognizing your own part. Like, what part are you playing in whatever the issue is, whatever the problem is? What role? How are you contributing? What role do you play? How are you contributing to the dynamic? There's something that you are doing to contribute to this dynamic. It's always a two-way street. And then the other thing is, can you allow the other person grace? And you have to work with another person. So it can't even just be like, I want to work on this, then we're going to do this. It's like, you have to allow them grace, and you have to allow it to be a compromise. Like, how can you give up enough? Like, can you work in partnership to not be in control of the entire thing? Like, can you really allow your partner to collaborate with you? You know, like, can you really genuinely be a team player? And it takes being uncomfortable. It takes being able to sit in emotions that don't always feel good, and yet still hold caring and love and the other person's well-being in mind and heart. It takes being honest. It takes being vulnerable. It takes patience. It takes emotional maturity, really. And so what I've noticed in as my emotional maturity has increased, as I've become more emotionally mature, I have become more gracious in partnership and less harsh, more forgiving of myself as well and of my partner. And in that, we actually have the opportunity to influence each other in such positive ways, you know? So where are areas in your relationship, maybe if you think about it, that you really want it to change or you want it to be better? But what have you done to contribute to that? And I mean genuinely. And when I say, what have you done, I don't mean yelling at or identifying to your partner that they need to change. How have you yourself contributed to achieving whatever it is in your relationship? What one of my approaches that I take to any problem in my relationship is me first. If I think something is an issue between us in the dynamic, I am going to try myself to identify what I can do about it. How am I working on it? Before I go and I say, you need to do this, or I want you to do this, what have I done? Because it's very easy to voluntold another person that they need to fix a problem. But as soon as you try it yourself, one, you'll realize you really don't want to say it to that person because it's freaking hard. And you might also, number two, you might also realize you were the problem. Okay, so the problem might solve when you address it. Number three, you're going to approach them when you do, and with so much more of a in such a much more approachable way, a much more fair way. And also the chances of that person being willing to work on it when you've already started to, or you're invested in a way where you know that this is not a them problem, this is something that you're going to also work towards, it makes it a lot easier for another person to be interested in it, right? So in the areas in your relationship, the things that you think need work, what have you done? What are you doing about it? How are you working towards it? And if you're doing that, and then it is something that you need to address with your partner, then even in the problem solving aspect of it, how can you contribute? Can you provide? This is one that I am currently working on, and I need more work on. Like, this is one that is definitely a challenge for me. But can you give them patience and space to change what they want to change, or do, or step into something that is very much a challenge for me. I totally get it. I'm kind of like fast moving, and I'm kind of like, when I want something, like when I decide that it's time for something to change, or I want to do something, it's like I want it now. And that's not how it goes in relationships. And my partner's just also just not as fast moving a person as me, which is so crazy because I'm the projector and he's the manifesting generator. But no, I'm just like buzzing around. So it's something that I need to work on, though, because part of this is not an actual love language, but part of how he feels loved is patience and understanding and space. And I know that through his gene keys, but I also know that through how much it resonated when I read it, like the knowingness of that. It's so true. It is so true. And I am so guilty of being impatient. Being impatient, and also being kind of like a tough critic, you know? Like I have a bit of a burning gaze. And with that projector energy, my penetrating aura, it can feel very targeted. It can feel condescending. It can feel a bit spotlighted, like exposed, you know? Partially I can't really help it. And the other partial part is very much conditioning. Like, it's just how I was raised. I grew up with that, and then I do that, you know? but I see what it does for him when he's given real understanding and like freedom to to be him his way. Not my way, his way. His way is fine. His way is great. It really definitely does something for him. So that's something that I'm working on because I want to give that to him. I love him. When you care about a person, it really, when you're not heated and you're not in a triggered place, it doesn't feel bad to want it. It feels good. It feels nice to think of giving them what they need and what they want and what makes them happy. So ultimately, I do want that. I do want that for him. So things become a very different story and from a triggered place, right? But if I remind myself of my overarching goal, what the point is here, then I just every single day try again, try again, try again, try again. And that's how I've achieved every single area of my inner work, everything that I've wanted to adjust about myself, improve about myself. I just every day. And I might fuck it up and just again, the next day, just keep on trying. So this episode is all about taking personal responsibility in our relationships and a bit more of a humble approach, with our partners, because at the end of the day, like none of us are getting this exactly right, you know? But ultimately, I know I can only speak for myself, but I like to assume that people, I like to, my intention is heart, and I like to give other people the benefit of the doubt that their intention is from their heart too. And if I want to be the best version of myself, I think that others also want to be the best version of themselves. So if they're attempting to do that, I think I can give love, kindness, and patience, and trust that if they value this relationship, then they'll definitely want to. I think there's something about that stance of like, I really value this relationship and I want it to be great that it's almost irresistible in terms of wanting to do things that make it better. Remembering that we chose these people for a reason. And if in that, when you hear me say that statement, if what comes up for you is that you realize that you didn't really choose, or that the reason that you chose for was not one that is truly in alignment with your values, what's important to you, then that's another thing to look at, right? But if you genuinely chose this person for the reasons you still stand by, reasons that are aligned with your values, then how can you take responsibility for your part in the dynamic? I think all around better relationships will show up, will exist when we all kind of think about it in terms of what am I doing? How can I make this better for me and for you, for everyone involved? Alrighty. Sending everybody some love. I'll see you in the next one.